the Scribes chamber. As you can see from the internals, this is our most stunning presentation yet. Huge shout out to the temple team for all the work and time it took to make this building facility, to create the details that you see inside of the scribes tables and like scribe and scroll bookshelves. It's stunning. And in this video, we're going to summarize what it is that we are showing you. We're going to provide additional notes and information on what it is that we're looking at. Now, to be clear, Ezekiel does not say specifically that there is this building here and it is a library. We get our dimensions from the first temple, and we conclude that these two buildings on either side of the king's house serve the purpose of a royal library and a treasury. Now, as a treasury, we didn't really build out the internals of it. It may just look exactly the same. The building may look the same. They may serve slightly different purposes. But we felt as though, based on the first temple, based on the Dead Sea Scrolls, based on the royal house, the palace at Shushan, there was a treasury and there was a royal library. So based on all that information, there would be a library in the temple complex. Okay? And we're suggesting that this building here fits that description. So we have notes here, as you can see, and lots to talk about, lots to discuss, and we will take you further inside the building and facility and show you as well where we're getting our conclusions as to what it is we're looking at there. So as we've done in each video, we're going to take what Ezekiel says, and we are also going to take what we call the House of David, which is the first temple, which provides us a little bit more insight, as well as the Greek Old Testament. The Septuagint provides more important details here as to what we believe is next to the king's house, the king's royal library. All right, here's some of our notes. And if you recall from the last video, we had talked about the pillars in the temple, Solomon's porch. And in that, we get the actual distance and layout of the pillars of a building that is 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide. Now, we're not saying that the layout of that first temple building is exactly like this, but essentially that width of 50 matches another width of another building called the Porch of the Pillars, or Hall of the Pillars. And again, this is in the first temple. And this building is 30 cubits by 50 cubits. So both of these would be in the Ezekiel temple in one form or fashion. That's what our view is. So it's called the Porch of the Pillars in 1 Kings chapter 7. The length 50 cubits, width 30 cubits. Porch, and then there was a porch for the throne and the judgment. Now, there's another place that where the throne was, but seemingly next to that was this building. Now, what we've done here is we've kind of taken those measurements and taken a side view. And isn't this amazing that from a sketch here, then you can see this come to life. Now, what we're doing is we're looking at a side view here of the wall cut out, of course, and what you can notice is that we have this in 3 stories. So these are windows here, and our height is 30 cubits. So as a height of 30 cubits, that means it's 3 stories. Every 10 cubits is a story, essentially, okay? And then we have kind of catwalks, and if we were to look at the catwalks from looking down, we have 3 main supporting pillars, and then we have catwalks going around, and on the bottom floor, the area of couches. Okay, so this is the first floor, and then second and third floors. So this is amazing because this is what we start off with is just a sketch and the idea and theme of a library, and then Temple Team goes about building this. So what we're doing is we're realizing that there's a space in the Ezekiel Temple for a building that is 50 cubits by 30 cubits, and we're calling it the Scribes Chamber. Okay, so that's what we can see here, and these are our main notes, and these are in the all chambers document on the website, in the Millennial Temple playlist, in all chambers. So Scribes Chamber, Pillars of the Court, okay, or Porch of the Pillars. And what we have here is this is the level of the porch, and that is a porch attached to the building, of course, door, and we have a pitched roof here just because in Jerusalem there are lots of these pitched roofs that are of this red ceramic tile, so we applied that to our roof. Now, if we were to look down at the building, now we're looking down. Here you can see the porch, and it has 12 pillars. This is the porch area, and we're looking down at the building here. So 1 Kings 7:6, the hall or porch of pillars, its length is 50 cubits, and its breadth is 30 cubits, and there's a porch in front with pillars, or a canopy, it says in Hebrew. And Ezekiel 42 verse 6 calls it the pillars of the courts. So that's basically an area Ezekiel describes. He doesn't give us the detail of the building and everything else. We go to the first temple in 1 Kings to find that. So we're suggesting that this is the scribe's chamber, Matthew 13:52. Every scribe is disciplined unto the kingdom of heaven, is like a householder. Okay, so a scribe has a house, has a library, and brings out treasure, which in the Greek is thesauros, new and old, or scrolls. And to us that means new Greek, old Hebrew. So the great library, as expressed in the Ecclesia of Pergamos, which was known for famous parchment making and a great royal library. Okay, so the Church of Pergamos, they were known for manufacturing parchment, and they had a great library, okay, to the Ecclesia at Pergamos in Revelation. So the scribe's chamber was next to the king's house in the first temple. In Jeremiah 36, verse 12, then he went down from the king's house into the scribe's chamber. Now, we do hope to show that to you. Okay, as you look here, up above is the king's house. Down below is the scribe's chamber. So we're in Jerusalem. We're in the city of David. That's the City of David Museum, archaeological site, and the remnants of King David's palace, the king's house. And as the camera pans down and we look below, the deck area is where hundreds of seal impressions were found. This is what they called the House of Beulah, right here, down below. But we know that to be the scribe's chamber, clearly identified in Jeremiah 36. So there are 4 people in Jeremiah 36 alone, I believe, whose seal impressions were discovered in and around this area. So we have the king's house, and right next to it, the scribe's chamber. Okay, here we have the steps of ascent. Above would have been possibly David's palace, and we have a home here just below, and we do have more of the scribes mentioned. This is Jeremiah 36, Jeriyahu. But within this is the scribe's room, and many beulah, many seals were found here. We have another video where we go into the proof of the temple's location based on verses like this. We have other proof of this. But essentially what this is saying very clearly is that you have the king's house and the scribe's chamber is next to it. Now this is true, where the king's house is David's palace in the city of David, archaeological site. Below is called the Bula house, all right, which is the scribe's chamber. Hundreds of Bula seals were found. And so he went down in the king's house in the scribe chamber, and all the princes sat there, Elishama, the scribe, and Jeremiah of Shaphan. Now, both of these Bula seals we talked about in a previous video were discovered. So we actually have the seal impressions from these actual people in the precise place, proving that this is, in fact, the scribe's chamber in the city of David in Jerusalem. So in the city of David, presently, it's called the House of Bula. Bula is a seal impression, which is next to David's palace. So it perfectly matches what it is we're also showing you, in that you have the king's house, and next to it you have the scribe's chamber. Okay, so we're also pulling the inspiration from the first temple to apply it to this building. In the Ezekiel temple, the inner court, there's one on either side of the king's house. So, as we mentioned, there's space for two of these buildings, 50 by 30 cubits. Now, what we're doing here is, in this view, is we're looking down at the building. We have the porch, but approaching the building, approaching the porch, is a walkway, which you saw in the intro and in the beginning here, where we have pillars lining a walkway. In the Greek text, that's called a promenade. In the Hebrew, it's called a canopy or walkway, also called the pillars of the court. So we know the width, 10 cubits. We know that there's a hedge, there's a wall here, whose distance here to here is 50 cubits. And so we have a courtyard area in front of the scribe chamber. We have a porch in front of the scribe chamber in the building. Okay, so they are part of the outer court, aligning with the porches of the 30 chambers. So essentially, what that means is that this porch here, it goes around and it aligns with the pillars that go around into the outer court. All right. The porches of the 30 chambers. They are separated by the hedge from part of the Mishnah porches. And the porches are 50 by 14 cubits with 12 pillars. All right. And although not gates, it could be thought of as the Parbar gates and westward. So these two buildings are westward. And we believe it's also a school. It's a library. It's an education facility. And so we're applying the principles of both Greek and Hebrew texts of a school, a Mishnah, which means second or double rank, quarter or district. It's translated college in the King James and 2 Kings 22 and 2 Chronicles 34. Our word in English, school, comes from Greek, skuli, which means leisure, free from labor. So that's why in the first floor we had tables and couches in more of a relaxed setting, because it does mean a place of leisure. Okay, that's what the word school means. Okay, in our next section of the notes, we're going to talk about the Hall of Pillars, as you can see, the Royal Library and Treasury. Now we're going to talk about some things that we're going to do a whole other video on, and that is the promenade and the peristyles. It's very important that we actually include those in this video and include the details of some of what we're showing you. They are very important, but they're also things that will require more explanation that we have time for in this particular presentation, because we're mostly just focusing on the scribe's chamber. But in front of the scribe's chamber, there are, of course, other things that you can see in the 3D building. So where we are is Ezekiel chapter 42. It says, before the north chamber was a walk of 10 cubits. That's the walkway we described. Now, the Septuagint calls that a promenade. peripatos, okay? And in Jerusalem, these are called covered walkways or cardos. And some of the roads that existed at the time of Christ, they are still there today. And some of the cardos and the pillars that align the streets, they also still exist to this day. So we'll show you some examples of what those look like, just to get an idea of what kind of went into our representation here. We believe it's very important. And then in Ezekiel 40, verse 17 and 18, it said, in the outer court, there's a pavement. So it describes a pavement in the Hebrew text, which the Septuagint calls peristyles. And these are rows of columns around a court or a building. So in the outer court, there's rows of columns under a porch, all right? And Ezekiel 42:6 calls these the pillars of the court. So they're in the outer court, all right? But what we're also suggesting is that these design elements that we see in the north chamber, we see in the outer court, they also exist between the north chamber and what we call the Scribes chamber, okay? It's called the Hall of Pillars in the first temple, all right? But thus, the promenade and the peristyles continue from the north and south chambers to the Hall of Pillars, okay? And we get this information from the first temple. He made a porch of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, its breadth was 30 cubits, and its porch. So we have a building 50 by 30 cubits, and then we have a porch. Now, our porch is 14 cubits because we have a space which is essentially 50 by 50 cubits. But there's a wall, okay, outside, okay, 6 cubits in the wall, and then we have 30 cubits occupying the building. That leaves space for 14 cubits to be in the porch. All right, so the width of the porch is 50 cubits, all right, but it has a depth of 14 cubits, and the reason for that is there's a 6-cubit wall behind the building. We'll try and show you that. Okay, here you could see the wall that is passing along here. It passes behind the building, then we have the building, and then we have the porch in front of the building. And the Septuagint describes the columned porch, okay, alum, all right, in the Greek, of pillars, which is stylos, 50 cubits in length, 30 cubits wide, being joined together by a columned porch. Okay, so basically what the Greek text of the first temple says is that the two buildings that we're describing here, okay, they are connected by a porch, and that's what we also are applying here, is that we have the north chamber, and the north chamber is connected to the scribe chamber with a column porch, by a column porch in front of them. Thus, the peristyle promenade joining the north chamber to the scribe chamber. All right, so that's why we have the walkway. We have it covered with pillars because it's a promenade. It's a peristyle. All right, so we'll get more into that, guys, and do a little bit more detailed explanation in a future video dealing with the pillars of the temple and the peristyles and promenades. But we are suggesting this is a royal library. All right, in Greek, bibliotheki. And we find the royal library, of course, in the palace at Shushan. All right, just like we showed you, the king's house was a model after the palace at Shushan. Okay, the palace at Shushan has a royal library. Okay, we read about it. Esther, chapter 2, verse 23, describes the matter of inquisition, and that it was written in the book of the Chronicles. That's what it says in the King James. But the Septuagint says the order was to write for a memorial in the royal library. Okay, royal library here is the word bibliotheki. Okay, biblio is like where we get the word Bible, comes from the Greek. All right, so there was a royal library to the king, all right, in Shushan the palace. And what we're suggesting is that what this scribe's chamber is also doing, performing the same function as a royal library. Ezra chapter 6, verse 1, Darius rendered a decree and examined in the libraries. Okay, libraries, again, we're getting this same word, bibliotheki, all right, of the treasuries. All right, so treasuries here and libraries are indicating that the treasuries of the great kings and empires, they also had libraries inside them, okay, or some of the same building. And what we're suggesting is one of the buildings on the one side of the king's house is a library, the other one is a treasury. So he had them checked, and they found in the palace, okay, the chapter of the scroll. And this is the scroll of memorial. Scroll of memorial in the royal library, which we see in both Esther and Ezra. All right, now treasury, and the word treasure in Greek is thesaurus. Isn't that amazing? Just like the word we have in English, thesaurus, all right, it's a book. And that's really what the treasure is the treasure is God's word. Okay? And that's what we're also saying is that one of the buildings is a treasury, all right, thesaurus, and the place where valuable and precious things are collected in a storehouse. All right, so that we have two buildings basically identical in their exterior layout. Their interior function could alter one from another slightly. Now, the tablets are also represented the fact that we have a royal library, we have the Torah in a building. Well, if we were to take the Ark of the Covenant, it had a measurement of 1.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits. All right, so 1.5 by 2.5 cubits. And if we were to take that measurement of the Ark of the Covenant and we were to multiply it by the Holy of Holies in the temple, which is 20 by 20 cubits, all right, the Holy of Holies, 1.5 times 20 is 30. 2.5 times 20 is 50. Identical measurements to the library. Okay, so the library is representing the Ark of the Covenant. And what was inside the Ark of the Covenant? The tablets. The tablets, okay? So there's no Ark of the Covenant in the Ezekiel temple. It is, there's no Ark, but the Ark of the Covenant is represented in the architecture. In this case, what we're calling the Hall of Pillars, the Royal Library, the Ark, all right, the box, proportionally the same exact measurements, all right, going into this building. So the building is like the Ark of the Covenant. Inside is the books, is the Torah, is the Word. So there you see all the scriptural support going into what it is you are looking at here. We are very excited for the opportunity to share with you the scribe's chamber in 3D. Now we can see the porch. Okay, we can see the promenade in front. And by removing the back wall, we take a look inside. And we apologize for the slowness of the loading of the application, but it actually gives us an opportunity to see some of the layout and the structure of what's going on inside. So we have the supported catwalks by wood pillars. We'll see wood pillars in the temple. We saw them in the north-south chambers. Here you see the spiral staircase going up. There are also spiral staircases in the temple representing strands of DNA. And that's forming something very interesting because there ends up being 12 pillars in the interior as well as the porch, because we have 3 pillars in the middle. There are 8 pillars. And then there is another pillar with the spiral staircase. So here you can see the scrolls and the ink wells. Minute details that we want to take the time and show you how amazing this build out has become to represent an ancient library of scrolls, also books, draft tables, and even scroll cases. So there is support, as you could see, that there would be a scribe's chamber next to the king's house, and also a place, a repository for the king's treasure. And the treasure is thesaurus. All right, it's his word is the treasure. So we do believe the treasure of the Word of God himself will have a building to recognize the major prophets and throughout history. So that's what we're showing you here. The ancient style scrolls and scroll cases on the outside here. Now this is what we call the promenade or the walkway with the covered pillars. What we're looking at here to the right is the outside kitchen to the north chamber, and then we have the scribe chamber to our left. So this is just to get a view inside this courtyard area. So this is what we were saying before, that Septuagint made note that the two buildings here were joined by a porch, and that also is called a promenade or peristyle, covered, okay, walkway. So we're looking here at the door going into the north chamber, and then we have the cooking, okay, towards the west in the north chamber. That's where we see the boiling pots here and the hearths. So they are outside the north chamber, and as we turn around, we have the king's house here straight in front of us now. So that's where we're suggesting, as we've repeatedly stated, that the king's house has next to it his treasury and what we're called the scribe's chamber, as you can see here. So guys, this is very exciting for us to share with you. We will have more. There are previous videos where we show you the proof and evidence of the scribe's chamber in Jerusalem, the location of the temple, the Bull of Seals. And here is our intro video, and for our series on the 3D temple, this was our goal, is to make the temple complex like this, but now by his great graces we are building out the interiors of many of the buildings. We have built out the interiors of the gates, the north and south chambers. Now the scribe's chamber. We have also built out the king's house. So guys, thanks for watching. We will have links for you where you can go into this 3D model, and we will also have links to the previous videos on the scribe's chamber. We have several of them, and we'll link those so you can get up to speed. And as well, we'll have a blog post with the notes of this video. Okay, we'll have a blog post for the notes. The blog post will also refer to the videos that we were talking about. So guys, thanks for watching. We truly hope you are enjoying this series as much as we are. And a voice came from the throne saying, "Praise our God, all you his servants that fear his name, both small and great."